Good morning and welcome to the San Francisco Interfaith Council online briefing for faith leaders. Today's program shines a light on the Community Living Campaign's efforts to benefit seniors and people with disability. A special thanks, the San Francisco Interfaith Council online briefings are supported by a grant from MetaFund. Thank you. The important and ongoing work of the San Francisco Interfaith Council would not be possible without generous funding from congregations, corporations, faith-based social service agencies, foundations, judicatories, and supporters like you. Help us spread the word. Visit sfinterfaithcouncil.org to learn about SFIC programming and how to become a supporter. Follow SFIC on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe to SFIC's YouTube channel to watch all of our previous virtual events. A bit of housekeeping. Today's program is being recorded. For audio and video, all participants are muted and without video to minimize distraction. To submit a question or comment, select the chat button at the bottom of your screen and send a message to Q&A. Time permitting, a response will be given. To activate closed captions, select the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and click Enable Live Transcription. As COVID-19 case rates slowly climb, now is the ideal time for San Franciscans to prepare by taking actions that can protect them, their families, and their community. The San Francisco Department of Public Health urges people to be ready by staying up to date on their vaccinations, knowing how to reach their doctor, keeping a supply of rapid COVID tests, keeping a mask handy, planning ahead for possible infections, and staying informed with trusted sources of information such as sf.gov/COVID. The San Francisco Department of Public Health also recommends the following for keeping congregations safe during COVID. Continue to gather. Keep in mind your congregation's demographics. Encourage vaccines and boosters, wear masks indoors, reinforce the stay at home if sick message, provide testing resources, and share be COVID ready messaging found at sf.gov/b/COVID-ready. For more information, call 628-652-2700. The vaccines are safe and effective. Go to sf.gov to find a vaccine site or vaccine event in your neighborhood. Now is the time to come together as San Francisco. Together we can stop Asian discrimination, bias, hate, and violence. The COVID-19 virus has no race or nationality. It is simply a disease. To report a hate crime, call the SFPD at 415-553-1133. And at this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to the Executive Director of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, Michael Pappas. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Trey. Good morning. I'm Michael Pappas, and on behalf of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, I want to welcome you to this week's online briefing for faith leaders. The Community Living Campaign cultivates connections to help seniors and people with disabilities age and thrive at home. With the ups and downs of the pandemic, isolation and loneliness became even more prevalent, creating particular challenges for these vulnerable sectors. This week's online briefing for faith leaders, hosted by the San Francisco Interfaith Council, welcomes Community Living Campaign founder and co-executive director Marie Jobling, who will present on how community leaders have found new ways to reach people where they are through online exercise programs, writing groups, wellness workshops, cultural celebrations, and local history stories that have blossomed on Zoom. Additionally, she will share how neighbors can support their neighbors by way of food delivery, doorway visits, emergency preparedness, and regular connections. The Community Living Campaign has also added transportation support to assist with essential trips and brought connection into people's homes through tablets, internet access, and online computer lessons in English, Spanish, and Chinese. The Community Living Campaign continues to place older adults and people with disabilities in part-time paid employment positions throughout the city. In all these endeavors, the Community Living Campaign seeks to bring joy, health, and connectedness to seniors and people with disabilities in San Francisco through community building, empowerment, and advocacy. At this time, I would welcome the chairman of the board of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, Nancy Nielsen, to offer a brief welcome, as well as to share the interfaith statement read at every meeting. Good morning, Nancy.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning. It's once again a great pleasure to be here and to welcome you all to this morning's conversation. At the beginning of every gathering of the Interfaith Council, we are reminded of who we are. This is an interfaith community. Whatever our individual belief, it can be freely expressed here with no apologies. If we are invited to offer a prayer in this setting, it should be offered according to the tradition with which we identify. If we are invited to speak on a subject from the perspective of our tradition, we are free to do so without fear of offending those who come from another tradition. We come together as people of faith to learn from each other that we might better understand the multiplicity of faith traditions in our city and in our world. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so very much, Nancy. When we invite folk to lead us and ground us in a reflective moment, it's done by intention, and today is no exception. The work of the San Francisco Interfaith Council with the Department of Aging and Adult Services then, and now Disability and Aging Services now, was really prompted by an initiative spearheaded by Tom Nolan, who holds a Master's of Divinity degree, but is also the manager of LGBTQ senior programs at the Department of Disability and Aging Services. It was because of Tom's initiative that we held a very successful symposium that has led to a roundtable and collaborative efforts with the department. He has been a staunch champion of our work with aging adults and people with disabilities. And it gives me great pleasure, and it's a privilege to welcome him here today to ground us in a reflective moment. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. You're a dear friend, and I'm honored to be here, and honored especially to be here when we're talking this morning about the great work of the Community Living Campaign. As a member of the staff at the Department of Disability and Aging Services, my work is primarily around LGBTQI+ programs, and we work closely with the council. And Michael mentioned the symposium we had that was really wonderful, and out of that came a roundtable. There were going to be more roundtables until the COVID intervened. Hopefully we could revive those in the near future. I have given the faith journey at the breakfast, and Shireen McSpadden, our former director, and Kelly Dearman, our current director, have spoken, and so has Valerie Coleman, who's in charge of our SF friendly aging and disability friendly city program. So I feel very connected, and I watch almost all of these programs almost every week, and I enjoy them. So I'm sure Marie this morning will describe in some detail the creative work of her organization. DAS and the Community Living Campaign work very closely together in many ways. But underlying all their work, and I think really ours too at DAS, seems to me is a profound recognition of establishing and strengthening a sense of community to overcome isolation, often a sad and sometimes indeed tragic situation for all too many. As a gay senior myself, we do several things that make this community more difficult situation. And one is that most of us don't have children or grandchildren that we might be able to count on to help us in our senior years. And also, many of us have lost our entire families of choice through AIDS in the 80s and 90s. And finally, it's a sense of discrimination, both current and a fear of it. So added to that sense of isolation, we're doing a lot of things to try to overcome that in many ways we possibly can. And for me personally, as I reflect on aging, it takes on a special significance as I'm anticipating retiring this summer. So I recently have been guided by two writers that I have found very helpful. And one is Dr. Louise Aronson. Many of you probably know of her work. She wrote a wonderful book called Elderwood. And Frank Bruni, the former New York Times columnist, who's now a lecturer at Duke University School of Journalism. Dr. Aronson's book is called Elderwood. And I've had the privilege of hearing her speak on a couple of occasions. And I don't know if she's spoken here, Michael, on this program or not, but she'd be terrific if you could get her to come. And she is here locally. So she describes a phase in life after there's childhood, adulthood, and now we've got elderhood. And I'm clearly a member of elderhood, and trying to adjust my life to that, what that means for me. She talks about how there's certainly the very old, and elderhood is kind of like before that. We're basically can still be largely independent, but some of the things that are important to us when we're young and adults, competition, accumulation, and all of that kind of thing, that takes a past, moves into the past largely, I think. Not entirely, of course, but a large part it does. And so it's a time of getting fresh, learning to be more than to do in many ways. The other book I recently read is by Frank Bruni, and the book is called The Beauty of Dusk. He's a very prolific writer. He woke up one morning, I think he's 57 years old, woke up one morning and he was blind in one eye. It turns out he had a stroke, and evidently it's irreversible. And he had all kinds of feelings that happened to him. And the Beauty of Dusk reflects on how it's changed his life, how he sees things in a different way, slowing down a bit. And he talks about people wearing, metaphorically, wearing sandwich boards on different sides, saying, I'm suffering from this, I'm suffering from that, whatever going on, to create a greater sense of empathy. So he's trying in his life now to see that, to see in people that what's, what is troubling them. And he wrote at one point, when you're given lemons, make lemonade. And that was part of my education, which includes that clouds have silver linings and that night is darkest before dawn. And so he also was taught that life is about adjusting to loss. So I think this speaks to me, certainly, and I'm sure an awful lot of other people as well. He writes, at one point I went to bed with more grievances than I could count. In the morning I woke up with more gratitude than I could handle. I can imagine. So these two books have been very influential to me. And to me, it's tied together by the words of Derek Bell. Derek Bell was a law professor at Harvard, Black professor, and he resigned in protest over the lack of female minority members of that faculty several years ago. And I had the privilege of hearing him here speaking to the ACLU after that. And he talked about the civil rights movement. He said, you can look at something like that, some great cause, and be critical because not everything worked. There's still problems in the community and all of that. But he said, I discovered for myself that meaningfulness in life is a byproduct of engagement and commitment. To my mind, that's where I see myself. I see breaking down isolation as I can in any kind of ways I can, maybe in new and different ways, smaller ways than before. But trying to do that, trying to get engaged in ways that work for me. And there's so many causes, as we know, to be engaged in. So I would conclude with my prayer for you all, everybody on this program, and for myself, that our lives may be enriched by that commitment, to our commitment and our engagement to helping others, being part of the solution. Amen. Okay.
Thank you so much, Tom, for that testimony and for those references, which are important. And God bless you in your ministry. I call it a ministry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are very, very fortunate to have with us today Marie Jobling, who is the founder and co-executive director of the Community Living Campaign. Marie is a hero to me personally and somewhat of a mentor because what some of you don't know is that I was Mayor Lee's very last commission appointment to the then Department of Aging and Adult Services. And when I received that invitation, before I appeared before the Rules Committee, I reached out to Marie, who was really very much a mentor and helped me prepare for that. And since then, we have been working very, very closely together in terms of our collaboration with the faith community. Marie was spearheaded the Dignity Fund, which created monies for senior programs, and she is just nonstop a force, I would say, in our city. Marie, we're so happy to have you with us. The floor is yours. Educate us and inform us.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. We've been kind of a mutual admiration society. Really have appreciated all that you've been able to do and lead here in San Francisco. And yes, I really welcome the opportunity to tell you more about the Community Living Campaign and really just to provide some examples of what communities can do. You know, I'll share a PowerPoint here once I pull it up on the screen, but I want to begin by saying thank you, well, not just to the Interfaith Council today, but to the Department of Disability and Aging Services and the Meta Fund, because much of what you see in the following pictures and slides really would not have been possible without their help, as well as a very awesome team of seniors and people with disabilities and other allies who make up the staff of the Community Living Campaign. A couple of them are on today. Kate Kukro is the other co-executive director, and Medina Siddiq, who is our new leader for the Emergency Preparedness Program. So let me see if I can get this PowerPoint up without too much fuss here, and get it back to the first slide. There we go. All right, so as Tom mentioned, you know, the Community Living Campaign is really working towards a city where we can all live and thrive in our homes and neighborhoods as we grow older. And, you know, we have a mission that really is to strengthen and mobilize individuals and organizations to ensure everyone's right to live in community, and thinking community very broadly, and to leverage the power of relationships to improve services and support. So another way of saying that is, regardless of the issue, relationships are part of the solution. So what we have pictured here is the grocery delivery team in the Bayview district, and that is drawn from people who have known each other maybe for a lifetime and are committed to help the seniors and people with disabilities who can't get out and who struggle to get healthy food in their neighborhood. So, you know, from the very beginning, we kind of settled on some values that would guide our work, even though we didn't know yet what that work would be. But those values really have continued with us, and they really are about what it takes for people to have a good life, whether they're a young senior, an older senior, a person with a disability, or whatever. And so I'm going to just quickly highlight them, and hopefully as we kind of go through some of the programs, you'll see these threads kind of represented as you look at how we have done our work over time. Ending isolation and loneliness, which of course has become a huger issue during, I don't know if that's a good word, huger, but has been a bigger issue during the pandemic. Living in a home that enhances dignity. Home is so important. Contributing to others in the community. And we know that for so many people, their happiness is really, and their wellness is really tied to being able to help others. Building communities that value fairness, equity, and justice. Again, this is a value that's really come up to the top for us, and we're trying to figure out how to live that in our programs and our staff. Participating in communities that celebrate diversity, having real choices and making our own decisions, and basic financial security. Those are the values that guide us, and those are the things that help us decide what we do or don't do going forward. So that all kind of summarizes into sort of three areas. We do a lot of things that are very diverse, and sometimes people can't figure out who we are, what we do. But let me just say, we do community building, we do empowerment, and we do advocacy to help people age in place. So the programs, the community building ones. We have food networks that deliver groceries to people who can't get to food banks but need the fresh fruit and vegetables and other support. We do community connector networks, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them, and one in particular that was really started by Reverend Glenda Hope, and other networks that are active throughout the city that we have kind of adopted in a way. Empowerment. We have the Neighborhood Tech Connect program, which is now trying to really step up our efforts to help people understand and be able to use technology, internet access, devices, training, support, technical assistance, assistive devices. Those are all part of that piece of our work. And we do training not just for the community, but for our staff. Senior disability employment, we have the SF Reserve program, which Michael mentioned. We have a reservist here at the Interfaith Council, and the Work Matters Collaborative, which again just puts focus on the fact that seniors want and need to work. And then lastly, organizing and coalition building. And so we have a few examples that we'll talk about today: the Tech Council, the Dignity Fund Coalition, and efforts with the Department of Disability and Aging to reframe aging and ability. So the food networks, before as I mentioned, they really provide groceries to people who are isolated and in neighborhoods in the south part of the city. But I want to tell you how it started, because that really reflects how many of our programs started. We had a person who was actually working with us and was helping with computer training, but she also saw that her neighbors, many of them were widows. When their husbands passed, their income dropped. They had stairs, which made it difficult for them to get out as they were older. And she knew they needed things like food. And so she went to the food bank in her neighborhood and said, if I come and get the groceries, can I deliver them? And the food bank said, okay, that's fine. And then she went back and told her friends about that. And her friend says, you can't do that. And she said, what do you mean I can't do that? She said, well, there's more than 5 people in the neighborhood who need that. So you're a good organizer. Help us figure out how to do this for others, and we'll help you. And so that started with 5, and now is 230 people that get regular grocery delivery in the south part of the city. 230 households, 111,700 bags of produce, and often information about resources slips into those bags. And it's not just the groceries, it's visits and it's hours of phone calls to make sure people are ready for their delivery, but also to see how they're doing, and to rope in neighbors if someone needs help with getting their garbage can delivered to the street or other things that make their place safe. So, it is important to kind of measure success. So, of course, as we survey people, a lot of them really appreciate having access to fruits and vegetables. 90% said that was important to them. But it's also important to know what difference it makes in their lives. And so here we know that people really feel it helps them stay in their homes, that it helps them know that they can get help when they need it, and it helps them feel less isolated. So again, this is the first of the many slides we've included, so that when this gets sent out, you can follow up directly with staff in our organization if you'd like to learn more. So the community connector networks. So they've created connections for almost 1,000 neighbors over the past year, and it's both virtual and in-person activities. As you can imagine, when the shutdown happened and our whole life changed because of COVID, all of the activities that we were doing in person all of a sudden had to transition online in some way or be provided in another way. So we've continued to do that, and I'll share a little bit more of how we did that. But we know that keeping those lines of communication and connections there really help people continue to get other services. We also know that there's not enough money for all the services people need. But on the other hand, neighbors and friends and faith communities can really help people provide what's needed. Our rule of thumb is that 20% of what people need to be able to stay living at home and supported, 20% comes from formal services, and 80% comes from friends, family, neighbor, colleagues, people in faith communities. That's really where we need to provide the strength. So here's a map of where some of our networks are. And you can see they do kind of go to the west and south part of the city here. The little blue hearts are Food Network sites. The red hearts are community connector networks that we started. And the St. Francis Square and Senior Power are networks that we kind of adopted or adopted us, and that we provide support to. And I think this is probably a good time to sort of recognize that these hearts in many ways represent faith communities who have welcomed us and allowed us to begin to provide services and support activities at their site. So this is kind of our roll call of faith communities that have been so helpful to us. The Edison Church, Church of All Nations, Lutheran Church of Our Savior, Cornerstone Trinity Baptist Church, Forest Hill Christian Church, Golden Gate Church, St. Anne's Catholic Church, St. Finbarr's Catholic Church, and St. John of God Catholic Church. So we would not have the programs that we have. They would not be available in communities that don't have senior centers or other kind of options if it wasn't for the faith community here in the city, and we are very grateful. So let me tell you a little bit about what they are. You know, I started work here doing block clubs in San Francisco. And, you know, part of the idea was you bring people together in a geographic area, you provide some staff, and you ask people what they want. And so in some ways, the connector networks are a little like that. We provide some dedicated staff, and usually they come from the neighborhood. We try to create activities within walking distance, and so that's why the churches are so important to the goal of this program. We start with core activities that give people a chance to socialize. The heart of many of these networks were exercise programs, and with the pandemic, you know, the programs that offered exercise in person, like Always Active, were not able to do that. But little by little, we found trainers, and we've continued to provide as many exercise opportunities in person as possible. But we also have them online as well as an alternative. We don't go to neighborhoods unless we're invited. And if we do agree to go, we ask people to sort of be our advisors, to tell us what the priorities are, to provide support and a bit of supervision to the staff who are in those communities. And lastly, a low barrier to join. So there's no membership fees. There's not, you know, a lot of things that people have to do. It's kind of a big tent, and we welcome everybody in regardless of their income or their background. And I do think that that's one of the strengths of the program, is that everybody, we hope, feels welcome when they join us. And lastly, you know, we all know that we need to have younger friends, and we need to be able to have the younger generation understand how important it is to have older friends, and to learn sort of the positive side of aging. You don't get a lot of that on the media. So, so those are the 6 components of our connector networks. And like I said, you know, we try to make sure that it's making a difference in people's lives. So as we talk to them, you know, most all of them, 99%, say they know more about community services. Here they're learning about the free telephone services that are available. They know more about, they have 1 or more neighbors they can ask for help. And again, this is our OMI Food Network folks. They have an easier time taking care of themselves, and they feel like they're better able to stay in their home. And these are some neighbors who are putting together little library book boxes in front of houses, so people have another reason to kind of stop and talk and learn about each other. So the connector networks, if you want to find out more about them or see if one's appropriate for your congregation or your community, this is how you could find us. And there's also a full schedule of our activities on our website. So that's the link to the full schedule. And it's also possible to download a paper calendar. So when this gets sent out to you, you'll be able to click these links and be able to get the full information that's here. And this is just sort of an example of a few pages from our monthly activity calendar. We distribute paper copies to about 1,000 people, and then it's online in connection with our newsletter. It includes both online activities and a growing number of in-person activities that are coming back, including walks and in-person tech help and exercise classes and more. Am I talking too fast?
You're good. You're good.
I do kind of do that. Let me talk a little about transportation support. So our transportation program really focuses on helping people find taxi rides through the city's essential trip card and through paratransit. And we offer assistance for people to help them sign up both for free Muni and other transportation options. And they also kind of keep people informed about changes. Over the past 2 years, routes have closed down, opened up, changed. It's just been really hard to kind of know what to expect. So we've done our best to let people know in our larger network kind of what's happening. And where possible, because part of our mission is to advocate where we see a neighborhood that has been completely left out by the changes with the bus lines, and the number 10 in Potrero Hill was one of them, that we would go to bat to try to get that bus line restored. And let me just say how this program started. We were anxious to start a new neighborhood program. We were invited to go into Potrero Hill. We had our advisory committee, and we had the date for our first exercise program. And that was the day that the shelter-in-place orders came down and everything closed. And we no longer had a way to start a new program in that neighborhood. However, we did know that for Potrero Hill and other neighborhoods with so many hills and such difficulty getting a clear path to a bus, that transportation would be critical. So we were fortunate. We had a staff person who really was a transportation advocate, and she kind of stepped right in to not only figure out how to do transportation for Potrero Hill, but also to provide that service to others in our community. So again, you can contact her, Kathy, at the number and email below. We all struggle with technology, I think, and we will continue because it keeps changing. That there was a little rehearsal before this meeting just to be sure we all could figure out how to get on and click the buttons and show the screen and all of that. So, the need for access to technology has really been pretty amazing over the last couple of years, and it was even a challenge before that. But as people could no longer go out for groceries, for visiting family, to be able to know what's going on and feel part of a community without some access to technology, it just became really, really difficult. And so, we stepped up by providing, quite a range of digital literacy and tutoring classes to folks. And we really focused on Zoom because we realized if our whole world went online, that we had to help people find us and have enough information to be able to get into these classes that were wonderful, but Zoom was really the pathway there. And that isn't just the case for us. Every senior service agency and other group in the community, was really looking for ways to keep connected, and technology became the way to do that. We also have been providing devices and helping people get internet access because, again, all the computer labs closed. So when the labs closed, we did a survey of our former students. We called them all up, and about half of them did not have internet at home. So again, if we want to keep people connected and they can't go to a place where the internet is available to them, now we had to figure out another way. Fortunately, the libraries are opening, and little by little other places, but it still is a huge issue. And so we stepped up training for staff and volunteers, and a bazillion Zoom meetings, but it worked. So here you can see some of our training team here. We have training available and tutors available in Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. And we find that in our surveys, about 93% say they learn to find information to improve their well-being. 97% felt more connected to friends and family. This is a group that was doing a photo walk in the Mission to learn how to use their phone to take pictures and to send those pictures to friends and family.
Great.
So the Neighborhood Connect program, again, this is how you could reach them or find our full schedule of computer training online.
Great.
And I mentioned the languages here. Senior disability employment. you know, the way this program got started is that, you know, we had a board member who was a researcher and was interested in the needs of older adults. And when she was on the board, she basically said, after figuring out what we that the thing that you really do that's significant, and that you should figure out how to do more of, is that you employ seniors and people with disabilities. And it is because of that your programs are so connected with communities, that they're so innovative in some ways, and it really does expand your ability to do good work. And so we happened to go to a conference where we learned about the Reserve program in New York. And we said, aha, this is a program that will help us get more people, seniors and people with disabilities employed. But we don't have to necessarily hire them all directly ourselves. And the Work Matters Collaborative is to find other people like us who care about senior and disability employment. And there we go. This is the kind of the numbers we've served, almost 50 reservists, 18,900 hours of expertise provided through that program. Again, reservists say that their stipend is essential to their financial stability. They find their work contributes to the community, and that the work has increased their social interaction. So featured here, you have the folks who are part of our Senior Beat program. They were all folks who saw that seniors were not well represented in the media, and what was out there wasn't a very positive picture. And so they took it on themselves to begin writing stories, some for local papers, some now for a website called Senior Beat. And with the help of an editor, Robin Evans, on the right, they have now done over 200 stories that you can read about on Senior Beat. And I would say if you go there, you'll probably see somebody that you recognize. So they did Linda Ronstadt. So of course, most people know Linda, but really there's a whole lot of other folks who have done amazing work through their life, or continue to do that have been featured on Senior Beat. How am I doing with time? Okay.
You're great.
Okay. See, emergency preparedness was always kind of a part of what we did, but I have to say the pandemic and really the concerns over the last few years related to fire and bad air and heat and, you know, all of the things that are making us more nervous about our place in the world, just kind of highlights the need for more attention to emergency preparedness. And so fortunately, because of this DOS and the United Way of the Bay Area, we've gotten some additional funding to really focus on emergency preparedness for seniors and people with disabilities. That includes classes and outreach and go bags. And Medina Sadiq, who's on this call, is one of the folks who's helping lead that effort. So if you're interested in learning how it can come your way, just give her a call. So again, for the Reserve program, this is how you get in touch with folks who both either to be a partner. Any nonprofit or small business can be a partner, or to if you or someone you know is interested in getting a stipend to be a reservist and to serve their community, but also be able to get a little money to help cover the cost of doing that. That this is the place you get hooked up. So we wouldn't want to close without talking about the coalition building and organizing piece, because it does help us amplify the voices of people we hear in the community. And it gives us a way to reach out and include other communities that over time we've developed a relationship with. The Tech Council, the Dignity Fund Coalition, and the Reframing Aging Community campaign are all examples of that, as well as each year we go to bat in the city budget. Talk about the Dignity Fund, and that was an important thing I think that we all did. But the truth is, every year we need to still go back to the city budget and point out the growing needs that seniors and people with disabilities have. So the Tech Council meets monthly. If you go on their website, you'll find they provide just an amazing amount of information about resources related to technology. For example, yesterday they had a program with a group that does reviews of applications, phone apps and others that are particularly geared to seniors and people with disabilities and help them do a whole lot of different things. And they basically, I think, opened my eyes and others about all the possibilities are there and ways that technology can help people who have vision loss, who have other kinds of disabilities, and who want to make sure that technology can serve them in the same way it serves everybody else. So the Dignity Fund, we're very proud that we were able to pass a ballot measure. It funded it was a budget measure that is part of the charter. It was a charter amendment, which means that it can't be changed, can't go away just because somebody doesn't think it's needed anymore, unless it go back to the voters. It provided $6 million additional in the first year and $3 million every subsequent year for a length of 20 years. And the good thing is that once it goes into the Dignity Fund pot, it stays there. So it is kind of incremental, and you add 3 million the next year and the next year. There was a clause that said if city has a really bad year, you don't get the money. So we had a really bad year a few years ago, and we didn't get all that 3 million, but we fought hard and got a good portion of it back. And I think that's why the Dignity Fund Coalition remains, is to be able to keep an eye on it and make sure if there's changes needed that we're ready to step up and do that. They also do a really good needs assessment as a part of that process, so we can target with those new funds or other city dollars what communities have been left out, where the gaps are, and how people can really be able to get what they need here in the city in an equitable way. Sidewalk Search Party, it started because people had to go through so many hazards to get to our office with broken sidewalks, and construction has continued and makes part of its business showing people how to use 311 to get their sidewalk and other neighborhood hazards improved. One of our budget advocacy years was around employment, and so really the funding for the First Reserve Program came from that effort. And now, as we come to a close, we're doing another Keep Us Connected campaign. This is our fourth. We call it the Pandemic Edition because we know now how much is needed here in the city, and we are doing our best to try to figure out how to devote more resources to that. So this year we're asking for a total of 3.5 million a year for 2 years to pay for all of those things that I mentioned: internet access, devices, assistive technology, training, and technical assistance. And you know, we've had a little bit of success. Some money from the Dignity Fund is going to go in that direction, but really we just need to do much more. And this is one area, if I were to ask you to do one thing, it would be to go to the Dignity Fund website, and we have a petition there. You can sign the petition. We have flyers. We have all kinds of things that we are now getting ready to continue to share with the city policymakers to say, this is really an important thing. The city in the next 2 years will spend over $50 million on its own technology needs, equipment, software, hardware, and such, to make sure that the city can connect with the public. But there's nowhere really that anyone's paying attention to the other side of this digital bridge, which is that, you know, on the community side, there's nowhere near that much anything comparable. When you have large parts of the community that don't have internet access or devices or any of those things you need to connect, it just doesn't seem fair or right. So we are pushing this year for better. And so I've talked really fast. We do a lot of different things. We can connect you with other resources. So on this page, you can find us, you can call us, but some of the items on the right-hand side are really reports that provide more information about what seniors and people with disabilities need here in San Francisco. And I think that's it for me, but I hope there's questions.
Don't go anywhere. Okay, we have a lot of questions for you, Marie. I heard, and number one, thank you. That was comprehensive, and all of those links will appear on the recording link that will be sent out to our 5,600 e-subscribers today. I heard you several times saying you don't go to places you're not invited. Okay, I'm just wondering, because I don't want to use the word captive audience. You have a receptive audience, an interested audience. How can faith communities get involved with your program? What do they need to do to invite you? What are the expectations? I mean, demystify that, and I think you might find a few more red hearts or blue hearts on your map.
That would be super. Well, there's lots of different ways, and really it is just a phone call to start a conversation. And, as I pointed out, there are a number of congregations that have made their facilities available for us for programming. And we've maintained those relationships through the pandemic so that now we're able to open up again as quickly as possible. And we do provide some funding for that, but really we understand that it is a contribution from the congregation, and that we also then offer some additional activities and support for people who come on by. In some communities, it's a particular issue. In other communities, it may be somebody who just feels a need to see their neighborhood get treated better. So I mentioned Reverend Glenda Hope, and she lives in the Cayuga neighborhood. Most people know her for her work in the Tenderloin. But the truth is she was getting ready to retire, and she realized that, she knew everybody in the Tenderloin, but she didn't really know anybody in her neighborhood. As a person who was older and who lived alone, she was concerned about her own future as well as others like her. So she just started talking to neighbors, inviting them over, got access to the local church after a while. We provided some staff support. And that is really our most vibrant community connector network. But it was because of Glenda, and Glenda, the pastoral view that she had, and her sense of how you bring community together. And she's continued to provide what she did as a leader in the Tenderloin. She helps with memorials. She provides people for advice where there's maybe concerns about elder abuse or other things that are not quite right, and people trust her. So again, it may be a person in the congregation or a retired clergy person. I don't know what you're doing, Tom, when you retire, that can help kind of spark this. But just call us up. You want a presentation on emergency prep? We'll come. You want us to do a pop-up on tech at your site? We'll come.
What questions are the congregations asking you just logistically to make their space available?
Well, we know that, having insurance coverage is important. So we kind of lead with that's a possibility. That's something we provide. We have some funding to make it not really cost the congregation very much, that we're able to sort of support the use of the space because there's utilities and other things. And I think they want to know what we're going to do. And we say, well, you tell us what you think would be of most service to your community. And again, that's the point of having some local advisors on all of the connector networks so that they kind of provide the direction. We are grassroots still in our orientation, even though our budget now is over $3 million. I don't know how that happened, but we really try to make sure that our services stay connected with the neighborhoods.
And the congregants from those particular congregations, are they involved? Once you have a handshake and create that relationship, are they involved, and how are they involved?
Yeah, I think, in some more than others, but, to the extent they're happy to put something in their bulletin or their church notice about the activities, that helps draw people down to the hall and get them involved. There are particular concerns that congregations have about food or other kinds of home care, other services. So again, we're kind of happy to bring in what folks think would be important. And because of that, we do kind of build a connection with the congregation as well.
That's great. I'm dating myself a little bit. I don't know if you remember, but you spoke to a room full of people, a huge crowd at the First Unitarian Universalist Church ages ago, when you were talking about the importance of getting seniors back into the workplace. The reservist program, I'm guessing it was the child to come out of that incredible laboring effort. I just want to, because you mentioned the San Francisco Interfaith Council hosts a reservist, I just want to give a big plug for that program. We have the Reverend Deacon Nina Pickrell, who is wearing a couple of hats as a reservist. It's been a great partnership, and she is not only helping, work with Tom Nolan and I on relationships between DOS and the council, but she's also helping to do some important work at the Bayview Mission. Can you just kind of drill down a little bit on that program, and because I also helped you place a reservist because I happened to walk into Bureau and Sons shop, and they said, do you know anybody who might want to work part-time, maybe is later in life? And so you were the first person I called. Can you talk about that program? Because I think it's a great program.
Sure, we're glad to. So I love this program because it's kind of a matchmaking program. We know that there are community nonprofits and small businesses that are really strapped, don't have money to hire the help that they need. They really just need a few hours, maybe up to 10, 20 hours a week to help with, being reception, helping develop products, if that's kind of what they do, helping work with people, do social activities and so forth. So one, it's what do people need that they could really benefit from some help. On the other hand, we all know people who kind of at that point where they know they have a lot of skills. They really want to continue to contribute. They don't want people to think that they're put out to pasture and they've got nothing else to give. But on the other hand, they're not ready to go back to, full-time work or the work that they used to do. So again, this provides an opportunity for people to have to be a reservist, to get support, to get some funding, and to really know that what they're doing is of value. It's flexible. People join the reserve program, and after a year, if they decide they want to do something different, they're kind of in the same payroll system, so we just kind of can move them over to a new opportunity. And that's what I'll do when I retire. I'm not going to be able to stay home, so I'll look for something involving photography probably, because that's what I love to do, and I don't get to do enough on this job. Does that help?
Yes, but if you could talk a little bit, nuts and bolts. I remember at the very beginning of our relationship with the reserve program, there was a split in terms of compensation, and little by little we assumed more. Can you talk about what some of the expectations of say a congregation are if they want to take on a reservist?
Okay, this will test whether I'm up to date on it, but generally, when people start, we pay the full fare for a reservist, and then we ask them to contribute after a month, a few months. Really, the point is to be able to have longevity for the program. So if we just bring in 30 people and then there's no way to sort of begin to grow the funding for that program, then we'll always have 30 people. And many employment programs think it's all about giving somebody a job, and then 6 months to a year, you push them out and you force them to find some other way to work. And I think we found that the organizations so value the people that we've sent to them, they don't want to have them leave. And so, we've kind of worked on this compromise where we kind of fund most of it, but we ask the organizations to pay a share. There are a few instances where we don't ask that, but it's only because they've really done a lot of other work to benefit the program or the organization.
Yeah, you know this as well as I do, but I don't think that congregations anywhere in this city would be able to function without aging adult volunteers there. And I mean, they bring such skills and they feel valued. And so I would, just to put a plug for the reserve program, congregations who are looking to secure, some regular and steady assistance, look into the reservist program. Again, we will be sending all of these links out, but that one in particular, I would ask you to consider. Getting back to to what we spoke about earlier, what neighborhoods, if you could look into a crystal ball, or you could have dream dreams, what neighborhoods would you like to get into that you're not into now?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know if I could pick a particular neighborhood. I'd say a neighborhood that wants us. that really is it. We tend to work in neighborhoods that are diverse and more in the southwest part of the city, but that doesn't mean that that's the only place we could go. So Potrero Hill was a kind of a step out in a different direction. One of the things I want to mention is that initially we were so neighborhood based, and with the pandemic, all of our programs all of a sudden lost neighborhood boundaries. So all of our Zoom calls and our activities are open to anybody. The tech training that we do is open to anybody. We now are a little bit more balanced in a way that we can serve any neighborhood because of those programs, but we then do want to keep it anchored where we can to a neighborhood. And so if you want us, let us know.
I do want to talk about the tech training, and in doing so, I want to kind of give a shout out to Rita Semmel, our centenarian, who is on several Zoom calls a day and is able to navigate her way through there through technology. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of focusing on bridging the digital divide?
I think that anybody in a congregation who is worried about the future of their church with the pandemic has had to think about, how do I stay connected with the people who I care about and have been part of our communities. And so, we do. We do provide a lot online. I just think there's, whether it's to talk with your doctor or to be able to have food delivered or to be able to stay in touch with your family when they're afraid to visit you or you're afraid to visit them, to be able to get help because you need someone who speaks your language and you can get a family member on the phone to kind of help with that. All of those things are kind of opened up with the access to technology and the way we, aside from all the online calls, which, some just start with, how you get on Zoom. And there's a whole series on, talking to somebody on the phone, as long as they have a device, to help them figure out how to download Zoom and get to their first call or two, and then hand them over to our activities line or to whatever they want to do next. But, increasingly we're doing pop-ups, which we send a tech trainer out into the community. The person who leads our training program is Peter Karpathakis, who Michael introduced to us, and he has been a great team member here at CLC. And so it might be him that comes out to kind of hold a little station there with a laptop and to be able to answer questions about cell phones or your device, or even look on his device to know how to do things.
I think you would find receptive partnerships in the houses of worship because, quite honestly, Marie, when the pandemic began, the houses of worship had to pivot very quickly to virtual ministry and online worship. And in a strange way, it kind of leveled the playing field because people who could not get to worship, like aging adults and people with disabilities, were now on the same field with everybody else who was in the pew. And so yep. I think that there would be some really interesting conversations that could happen with the ministry teams in the congregations regarding this bridging the digital divide, because I think it's a ministry has taken a whole new meaning at this point. We are at the end of our time together. I know you and I we could chat for hours yes. on this because, and I just want to thank you for your passion that you have actualized into benefit for thousands of people throughout our city, and for the leadership that you've shown in this sector, because I remember sitting at those commission meetings and being inspired by your words, and continue to do what you're doing because it's needed. God bless you and thank you. And as we're saying thank you, I also want to say thank you to Nancy Nielsen and Tom Nolan for their contributions today, as well as to Cynthia Zambucas, the San Francisco Interfaith Council's Administrative and Program Associate, and Trey Russell Allen, without whose expertise in technology, these briefings would not be possible. Stay tuned for updates on future briefings. We will be in touch with you shortly to let you know when the next one is. God bless you and God keep you. That concludes today's program.